Hello from dreary central Pennsylvania. For my fellow Pennsylvanians, lifelong Pennsylvanians, this is April. And we know that April is determined by a magic 8 ball. You just never know what it's going to be on any given day. I do know that 2 days ago, we were able to walk around in shorts, and it was one of those wonderful sunny days that it wasn't 90 degrees and humid like it is summers here. It's warm enough you could be comfortable in shorts and a t-shirt, but you weren't sweating and all hot. It was a wonderful day. And I remember that in part because April is also uh, Child Abuse Prevention Month. And I was able to break free, and there was a event at the Center County Courthouse with the folks in the human services community here in Center County, as well as elected officials, having an event about Child Abuse Prevention Month. So I was able to break free and catch a little bit of that. But coming back to where we are here today, it's kind of a dreary, rainy day. I don't think the sun has been out at all. Um, so we here at the Dad's Resource Center and our fellow fatherhood colleagues, um, during times like this, we reflect, okay? And the Dad's Resource Center, most assuredly, um, fully supports all awareness campaigns and interventions for child abuse, for sexual assault, for domestic violence, um, as do our fellow uh, fatherhood colleagues, um, because we're men, right? And men do not raise their hands in threat or in intimidation towards others. We don't lay hands on other people. And men stand up when those who are vulnerable, children or women, might somehow be abused, neglected, harmed, or hurt. And so uh, we support all of these things. And we stand up with those who work on these consistently. At the same time, moments like this give us pause uh, because the one thing you didn't hear at the event when I was there was the words father or fatherhood. And what we do know, the CDC says that 1 out of 7 children are experience some form of abuse. But what we also know is that children who grow up outside of a family with their mother and their father living in the same household are much more at risk of neglect, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. And so, uh, to emphasize that point, I want to run through some studies that I dug up for the discussion here this evening. Um, One study found that the rate of child abuse in single parent households is 27.3 children per 1,000, nearly twice the rate of child abuse in two parent households at 15.5%. Another study, an analysis of child abuse cases in a nationally representative sample, found that children from single parent families are more likely to be victims of physical and sexual abuse than children who live with both biological parents. Compared to their peers living with both parents, children in single parent homes had a 77% greater risk of being physically abused, an 87% greater risk of being harmed by physical neglect, a 165% greater risk of experiencing notable physical neglect, 74% greater risk of suffering from emotional neglect, 80% greater risk of suffering serious injury as the result of abuse, and a 120% greater risk of experiencing some type of maltreatment overall. A national survey of nearly 1,000 parents found that 7.4% of children who lived with one parent had been sexually abused, compared to 4.2% of children who lived with both biological parents. Again, twice as more likely to be sexually abused a child in a separated family than living with both biological parents. A study of victims of child sexual abuse found that the majority of the children came from disrupted or single parent homes. Only 31% of the children lived with both biological parents. Although step families make up only about 10% of all families, 27% of the abused children in this study lived with either a stepfather or the mother's boyfriend. Two more studies. A 2009 study examined whether Child Protective Services involvement varied based on a man in the mother's life. Using data from the Fragile Families and Child Well-Being Study, the study showed that families living with a man who was not the biological father of all the children in the home and families living without a man in the home were significantly more likely to be contacted by Children Protective Services compared to families in which the biological father of all the children lived with the mother. And finally, a study at the University of North Carolina followed 644 babies after their birth for 8 years and found that maltreatment was lowest among children who lived with two biological parents. Maltreatment was most common in homes with a stepfather or a boyfriend. I think the theme that we see there is obviously we're better off with nuclear families. And so we want to support that if at all possible. But the world we live in, 1 in 4 children are in separated families. And we see that children are much more at risk of neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse in those situations than otherwise. And we also see that children are a little less or less prone to being victims of those things if they have their father involved in their lives. And that's problematic because of one more study I'm going to note. This is a Dad's Resource Center study that we did in 2019, where we reviewed 700 cases where both parents went to court wanting custody of their children. And a judge had to make a determination. So both parents wanted to have custody of their children. And when the judges made their determination, mothers received either full or primary custody in 496 of those 700 cases. So 5 out of 7. Fathers received full or primary custody in 100 cases. So 1 out of 7. And in only 104 of the cases, again, 1 out of 7, was joint custody awarded to both of the parents. And this is what we see in the system. And this is why we do what we do here at the Dad's Resource Center. We hear the stories. We have so many fathers who are willing and able and wanting to be in the lives of their children that aren't able to because of the family court systems, county agencies, human services agencies. And that's something that we need to consider relative to the impact on children. When there are contentious separated family situations, the focus is normally on the parents. But the real people who lose in that, the individuals who lose in that, are the children. So Child Abuse Prevention Month is a time when we should even further drive home the importance of father-family involvement, because this is the best way to keep our children safe. All those protective factors people talk about, they don't mention fathers, and they should. And that's a disservice to our children. It's a disservice to families. It's a disservice to society and our country. Regardless of whether it is a traditional or intact family or some form of separated family, willing fathers have to be there for their children. If they want to be there, they should be able to be there for them. Those who are not doing so need to step up and be the father their children need them to be. And we need systemic reform to eliminate the ways that our family court, county, and human services systems impede or deny father-family involvement. There's a great emphasis on father engagement programs and the need for fathers to be more involved. But there are countless willing and able fathers who are denied the opportunity to be involved in their children's lives due to biases in the family courts, county, and human services systems. I think everyone knows this is an issue. We just don't take it seriously enough to start to change the course and do something about it. And so, April, Child Abuse Prevention Month, is as good a time as any to say we need to do better with that because that's a way, perhaps the most primary way, that we can protect children. So, with all of that being said, to my fellow Pennsylvanians, we will get on with a dreary April day in hopes that the 8 ball rolls tomorrow for a much better weather day, maybe even a little bit of sun, and hopefully we can get spring started a little bit earlier so that it isn't summer the day after our first spring day. So with that, I want to thank you for joining me and have a good evening. Thank you very much.